Hello, it's Andrew Moncur, the CEO of CapitalMarketsDad.com. I'm speaking today with Novantum. Very much looking forward to this chat. 20 plus years in corporate sales. Worked for companies the likes of Bell, Shaw, NASDAQ, Computershare, American Stock Transfer.
What was the moment or role that truly helped you break into the industry and gain momentum?
Probably the biggest one was my first one in the space when I worked at MarketWired, that then became NASDAQ. What it allowed me to do is get comfortable and get familiar with a number of companies, especially in Vancouver. And what really benefited me was people in the space that had been years in the space before myself. In that regard, they were able to make introductions for me. And that's something that you take forever. Someone introduced you, I'm not to say when they didn't have to, but they took the time to do so. And so now here I am 10, 11 years into working in the space. How can I make connections? How can I introduce people to each other? I guess in a way, give back to when I started, that was incredibly important.
What skills do you think are most overlooked but absolutely essential in capital markets and consulting?
One of the biggest skills, again, it comes back to networking, but where people say thinking outside the box. My take on that is don't just think within your space. There's so many people that have now access to their own networks. And so, in that regard, if you were to talk to 5 people in Vancouver, it doesn't mean just Vancouver is your available network, your available market. No, that can go as far as Squamish, Whistler, Prince George, Quesnel, you name it. You never know where that next connection is going to be. And in the line of work, because there's various lines of work, especially one is in precious metals, obviously in mining, that is all throughout the world. Northern BC, Central Alberta, globally. So back to where if you just think of the city you're in or the people that you're talking to directly in front of you, it's limiting to think in that respect.
What resources or mentorships do you wish you had access to when you were starting out in consulting or entrepreneurship?
I think I was very fortunate that I had, access to some amazing mentors. And I think one of the parts about that is being at networking, being good at, this is something where you see and hear about 2 trains of thought. Have one job for 30 years or have 30 jobs, 1 year at a time for 30 years. 80% of the workplace still today says, well, have that one job for 30 years. My answer to that is there's no right or wrong. It's however you got to the place you're at. But in the case of, let's say, the other one where if there's 30 jobs, you have 30 potential mentors, 30 different businesses, all of the different types. And I guess where I'm going with that is talk to as many people as possible, get to know as many people as possible, because one of the best bits of information I learned in a very traditional business, the printing business, when I got out of school, and when I was in my 20s, what that owner taught me was exactly where we've talked on other times, that work-life balance. It's not just everything to be about work. And one thing that is still stuck to me today is, as he said to me, I'm a $3 million business and I do it fantastically. I have no interest in becoming a $5 million business because that will break my family, that will break me, and I'm not built for that. The mindset today is to become a billionaire, trillionaire, and so on and so on. And again, there is nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, but it doesn't have to be for everybody. Mm-hmm. Know where you excel, where you're comfortable, but back to it is have as many conversations as possible, because you will find that one fit that when all of a sudden here it is 20 years later and you start your own business or you become your own entrepreneur, that becomes the business or the business model you more or less will emulate. So in this case, I know what the website business is going to get to. I know it doesn't need to go beyond that, and that's perfectly fine.
What were some of the toughest challenges you faced when launching Capital Markets Dad, and how did you navigate them?
Delegate as quickly as possible. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. In my case, I know the vision and the vision that I want to create, but that is only one part of the business aspect. I'm very fortunate to have someone who heads up marketing out of the United States. I thought that was incredibly important to have them be US based. I've always felt that, out of the US, it's a different mentality and training when it comes to marketing. I feel like there are leaps and bounds still to this day where we are in Canada when it comes to that facet of the business. So in that respect, I know that is well looked after. Challenge I definitely am kind of facing, and this is where I'm now looking into my own network and seeking, is on the payment processing side. So where we're going there, like controller, chief financial officer, someone in that realm, because you can be very good at selling the business, very good at selling the business, but you won't have much money left to do that with if you're not good at collecting from the businesses that currently work with you. So I think that's very important to understand too, is a business is always still going to be based on revenue. And if you have hundreds of clients, but the revenue is not connecting to, or the spend is greater than the income, your vision will eventually run out. You'll have to, in a sense, find an off-ramp. So back to the delegation part of it, is having the right people who are very good at that particular task, that particular job. And so still to this day, I'm having to get better at knowing when to implement that particular person and to just get on it and do it.
What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
All comes back to talk to as many people as possible. Network as much as you are in the business, wherever that might be. Spend equal as much time networking, as much for yourself as the business. And again, where I go from that point is, getting to know what other people do and what other people do well, because this is all part of the learning and the growth aspect. I mean, you'll hear people say all the time, don't be afraid to fail. I'll flip the script. Don't be afraid to learn. Keep learning. Keep asking questions. Once you think you've reached the pinnacle of where you need to be for any business, is when you will fall flat on your face. You never stop learning. You never stop growing. You should never stop meeting people and asking questions, because again, you hear it and see it all the time. You will eventually become the traditional business that will be outpaced by a younger, quicker, hungrier startup. So never lose exactly that point of being the hungrier, younger entrepreneur, even if you're 20 years into your established business.
So what's one thing you wish more entrepreneurs understood about building a brand that's both personal and professional?
To me, it's all about authenticity. And you hear that it's one of those, it took us this long, we're gonna say buzzword. It's where you hear people talk about authenticity and then they use ChatGPT. Or, they say it, they don't live it. You have to be, there you go, authentic about your authenticity, which is, this is who you are. Who you're talking to right now, the information you're getting is from that person who thinks this when the camera turns off as much as the camera turns on. And I want people to know that there doesn't need to be the in-camera person and the off-camera person. Sorry to say, you need to be who you are. People want to know who you are. Doesn't matter if it's social media or face-to-face. So be you. Not everybody, you hear it, it's true. Not everybody's gonna like you. They don't have to, but be you.